lights and cameras and mirrors.
Oh, hello, it's your boy, Auteur Deluxe. Today we're going to talk about rewatches. I've had a bit of a change of heart on rewatches. Obviously, the big blank slate of free time that 2020 gave me with COVID, I was able to rewatch all kinds of things. Obviously, my very favorite movies I've seen more than once. There's plenty of movies I've seen more than once, but it was nothing for me to go 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Even movies I really like, I would go maybe 5 years without seeing them. Now, I've kind of closed the gap on that a little bit. And I used to think of it as a big waste of time to rewatch movies. Like, you've already seen it. What are you going to uncover that you haven't already uncovered? And that couldn't be further from the truth. What is a waste of time is sitting through movies that feel like homework that you're not going to get anything out of. Sit through movies that people tell you you're supposed to like and you don't like them and you know you're not going to like them. Or to just sit through bad indie movies. That's a waste of time. Rewatching something you know and love and know you're going to love again, that's fruitful and that's worth doing. So I've been doing it more lately. Like I said, 2020 was more re-examining old favorites and seeing how I felt about them now. 2021, I already have movies that I hadn't seen until this year that I've seen 2 or 3 times now. For example, Putney Swope. This movie is just so funny and I love listening to the anti-political correctness of it all. And when I say that, it's a very countercultural anti-political correctness. It's not what comes to mind now of just hillbillies yelling at each other on Facebook about masks. It's not that. It's a very countercultural kind of anti-political correctness that I think is funny and I think holds up and is interesting to look at.
Shouldn't you be in school?
Fuck you! And fuck the establishment! And fuck you people who are trying to make me part of the unestablished establishment!
All right, I'll pick you up tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Other movies I've seen a couple of times this year already are The King of New York and Light Sleeper, which almost complement each other as like these diametrically opposed. One is like all about the action and all about the over-the-topness, and the other one is this very subtle character study. Great double feature of 90s gritty New York movies. But the one that I keep harping on is Nosferatu, the 1979 Werner Herzog remake of obviously the classic 1920 silent film Nosferatu. This movie, it creeps back in every time I watch anything. I'm sitting there trying to pick what movie to watch, and I think, oh, okay, let's just watch Nosferatu again. And I've caved on that twice now, so I've seen the movie 3 times. And that's since March 6th. The first time I watched this movie was March 6th. So for me to watch a movie 3 times in a little over a month, it's doing something right. So I thought we should talk about it here. Oh, and spoiler alert. This is your spoiler alert. I'm not a huge vampire fan. I was in my early 20s during the whole like Twilight saga and the whole True Blood thing where everybody was obsessed with True Blood. I do love Bram Stoker's Dracula. The movie I haven't seen in years, but the book itself I love. I love the isolation of Jonathan Harker. I love the cold iciness of the Count Dracula in that book. I just love the isolation in that castle. He is stuck with this guy and he's fucking weird and he wants his blood, and I love that. There's some of that in this movie. There's not a lot of that in this movie, but obviously there's some of that. There's some of the 1922 Nosferatu. There's an intensely amazing soundtrack, one of the best scores I've ever heard in my life. Popol Vuh, I'm not sure how you say it. And the performances are great. Klaus Kinski outshines everybody, but everyone else is also very good. And we have all of that through the lens of Werner Herzog. Herzog's bleak, nihilistic worldview comes through. It comes through in the dialogue. It comes through in the writing. And when you have that through Klaus Kinski, it's very effective. He was evidently born to play this part, and we're just lucky to get to witness it. In this film, it does have a lot going on, but obviously it's all about the Count. And this movie, it builds up the Count before he's ever even on the screen. When his name is said, this woman drops a plate, the gypsies stare at him like he's fucking crazy for wanting to go see the Count. It's just this very ominous, very built-up thing. It's a classic part of this story, like it's the lore. Also, Harker's wife has this weird kind of cosmic spiritual connection to the Count, and we see that at the very beginning of the film with these weird mummified statues, and she's having this intense nightmare, and you have the bat in like time-lapse slow motion, and then she wakes up immediately, and it's great. But anyway, despite all of this, Harker keeps going, and he goes into the forest to go to Count Dracula's castle, and this is when we have this big crescendo of the score and the sun going down at the same time, and it's beautiful and it works great. We have that Popol Vuh doing Wagner, and it's intense, and I'll show you a clip of it here. So when Harker meets the Count, he's relatively meek, and he does have those sad Klaus Kinski eyes. So at first you're almost empathizing with him, almost. But then you immediately see him leap into action when Harker cuts his hand and he's bleeding a little bit. And at the sight of blood, the Count leaps at him. And it's one of the most intense scenes in the film where he flings this chair. And it's really, that scene, when I Googled that scene, when I was on the fence about seeing this movie, I watched it immediately after seeing that scene. That's some intense shit.
It's the oldest remedy in the world.
Oh, forget it. It's hardly worth mentioning. Just a little cut.
You know, it's only for the best.
Anyway, I'm not going to go do a play-by-play of the entire plot, but this movie delivers on almost every level. Klaus Kinski puts his spin on the Count, and when you watch this movie with the director's commentary, you hear Herzog talk about how he's very spider-like, and those hands, and when he's going after Lucy with those nails, it's very spider-like, very insect-like, and especially the ending, when he dies at the end, he dies like a spider that you hit with Raid. He goes out like a bug, very insect-like. And Klaus Kinski really captures that feeling of just going centuries without human touch, centuries without love. And he can't even die on his own terms. He can't even die at all. It must be an unbearable weight on his life, on his outlook. And that's one of those things. I worked in a nursing home for many years, and to fuck a vampire through a human lifespan, that becomes oppressive at a certain age. And some of these older people, when they get sick or when their spouse is gone and they're just kind of, health is failing and they're just kind of done with life and they're ready to die. They want to die, to quote Notorious B.I.G. They're ready to die. That's kind of the subject matter of that book, Being Mortal, which is a fantastically depressing book about end of life and chronic illness, about how you can die with dignity, and where, like, the whole purpose of medicine is to prolong life, but it gets in this weird gray area when you get, do you want to prolong a life where there's no quality of life and like palliative care, just keeping someone comfortable? Like, if you're going to die in a month, do you want to sit around and eat ice cream that's not necessarily healthy, and just being able to die on your own terms? Anyway, the Klaus Kinski character encapsulates all that. Stylistically, visually, this movie is gorgeous. There's obviously all kinds of vampire symbolism going on. We've got Harker at the very end once he's turned, and he tricks the maid into cleaning up the salt around him, the barrier, so he's allowed to escape. He kind of sneaks past that barrier, and also as soon as he gets past that barrier, he takes off his cross and chucks it across the room. It just stylistically, in the visuals, we have the very beginning of the movie, all the scenes with Lucy are very white. Everything in the background is white, and then it gets darker as we go closer to the count. The soundtrack, the score, it's amazing. It immediately became one of my all-time favorites. I listen to it when I read all the time. It's got levels. It's got folksy, old-timey acoustic guitar. It's got weird synths. It's got orchestral themes. It would be really easy for this movie to go for like organ sounds and like cliche Dracula stuff, but they don't, and it really pays off. It's one of the big pieces that keeps this movie together and makes it so great. Kinski is obviously the star here, but Harker is very good, Lucy's very good, and even the small parts like Renfield and his weird laugh.
Der Meister ist hier.
And even some of the non-actors. We have the people around the campfire in the village at the very beginning, the people in the diner, all the people at the end when the plague is killing everybody. There's a little child who just happens to sneeze, and they catch it in the very corner of the frame when they're showing the boat coming in carrying the plague. Also, the little old man at the very end in the gigantic top hat that is 4 sizes too big for his head, and he is told to arrest Van Helsing, Dr. Van Helsing, for killing the Count. But he says, "Sir, there's nowhere to put him. There is no town council anymore. There is no judge and executioner. There's nothing. Even if I am to arrest this man, which I've never arrested anybody in my life, where am I going to put him? There's no one to guard the prisons." Sometimes older period pieces can be a bit of a snooze, but this one is not. It's great. It's rewatchable. It's watchable. And it's a classic take on a classic take on a classic take. It's great. So what do you like to rewatch? Hit me up on the social media down below. Let me know. Tell me. I'd love to find out. And stay hydrated with blood, maybe? Blood if you're a vampire. Anyway, I'm just kidding. Have a good one. Bye. Thanks.